imagine a predator. But I don't want you to picture the kind of threat you've, been conditioned to look out for.
Right, not the guy hiding in a dark alley.
Exactly. This isn't someone waiting in the shadows to overpower you physically. This predator operates in broad daylight. They hide behind, well, a carefully constructed narrative of victimhood.
And behind profound vulnerability, which is the really scary part.
It is. And most terrifyingly of all, they use your own empathy, like your own desire to help, as the very trap that ensnares you. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are tearing apart the behavioral forensics and the clinical psychology behind one of the most destructive and misunderstood personality structures on the planet.
We really are. And, by the end of this investigation, you are going to walk away with basically the secret operating manual for understanding the covert narcissist.
Which is huge,
Yeah.
because you're going to recognize patterns of psychological manipulation that most people literally never see, even after, decades of exposure.
Yeah, decades. It's wild.
I want to bring you in right away to set the scene for us here.
Yeah.
Because when we hear terms like coercive control or narcissistic abuse, we usually picture something loud. We picture shouting, demanding, really obvious aggression. But this is completely different.
It is entirely different, and that stealth nature is exactly what makes it so devastating. We are not just talking about someone who is, a little selfish or has a big ego.
Right.
We have to treat covert narcissism as an invisible psychological operating system. It is this highly complex, completely subconscious machinery designed to extract emotional resources from you.
All while convincing you that you are the one failing them.
Exactly. We're going to strip this machine down today layer by layer. We're going to start at the surface, the casual comments you might hear in your living room on a random Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And we are going to dig all the way down into the deep unconscious developmental origins that wrote this toxic code in the first place.
Which brings us to the central, unresolved question that is going to drive our entire investigation today. And it's a question that frankly, haunts so many people who have survived this.
Oh, absolutely.
Why do the smartest, most driven, and most empathetic people fall for this trap the hardest? Why does having high emotional intelligence, a great career, and a deep capacity for love actually make you more vulnerable to this specific type of psychological predator?
It is a haunting question. It really is. Because society tells us that smart people don't get conned, right?
Exactly. You're supposed to be too smart for it.
Right. But to answer it, we have to start by looking at the observable behavior. We have to look at the invisible weapon they use to completely dismantle your reality. In behavioral forensics, we call it triangulation.
Okay, let's establish a baseline here.
Yeah.
In a general context, triangulation is just, bringing a third person into a dynamic.
Sure.
But in this context, it is a deliberate, coercive manipulation tactic.
Yeah.
It is designed to take a normal two-person conflict and instantly shift the power balance.
Exactly. Let's do a forensic line-by-line breakdown of how this actually sounds, because it rarely sounds like a threat.
Yeah, give us an example.
So imagine a scenario. You are standing in your kitchen making dinner, and you bring up a standard relationship issue. You tell your partner, hey, I feel like you've been really distant lately, and I'm feeling a little disconnected.
Totally normal thing to say.
Right. You are trying to initiate intimacy and resolve a gap. And your partner, the covert narcissist, doesn't address your feelings. Instead, they look at you, sigh, and say, my mother was right. She always said you were way too sensitive.
Oh, wow.
Or they might say, everyone I talk to thinks you're being incredibly intense right now. Let's freeze the frame right there. On the surface, what was just said?
Well, on the surface, they're just reporting a piece of data. They are just passing along an observation from a third party. But what was actually meant by that statement is entirely different.
Completely different.
The subtext is basically, you are completely isolated. Your emotional reality is fundamentally flawed. The targeted emotion they are trying to elicit from you is pure insecurity, self-doubt, and panic.
And look at the immediate shift in power, right? A second ago, you were raising a valid concern about the relationship. You were two equals negotiating a dynamic.
Right.
In one sentence, the conflict transforms into a social verdict. You are no longer negotiating with your partner. You have suddenly been put on the witness stand, and you are fighting a ghost jury.
I want to pause you right there and push back on this a little, because I think a lot of people listening might be feeling a little defensive right now.
Sure.
Because healthy people ask for outside advice all the time. If I'm stuck in a rut with my partner, or if I'm having a recurring argument, I will absolutely vent to a colleague or ask a close friend for an objective perspective. Like, hey, am I crazy for being mad about this?
Right, totally normal.
So how on earth does a listener distinguish between a normal, healthy partner who is just seeking outside counsel and a psychological predator who is using triangulation as a weapon? Because on paper, my mom agrees with me, sounds like something literally anyone could blurt out in a heated moment.
It's a crucial distinction, and honestly, if you get this wrong, you start seeing monsters in the shadows everywhere. In behavioral profiling, we don't just look at the action, we look at the intent, and more importantly, the responsiveness to boundaries.
Responsiveness to boundaries. Okay, break that down.
Let's say you are in a healthy relationship. Your partner brings up their mother's opinion, and you name the pattern. You say, listen, when we argue and you bring your family's opinion into it, I feel incredibly ganged up on. I need this to stay between us.
Right.
A healthy partner's nervous system will register your distress. They will pause, they will take accountability and say, you're right, that wasn't fair, I was just frustrated. I'm sorry, let's focus on us.
Because their ultimate intent is to resolve the conflict and restore connection.
Exactly, but the covert narcissist doesn't want resolution. They want control.
Wow. Okay, so what happens when you set that boundary with them?
If you attempt to set that same boundary with a covert narcissist, if you name the triangulation, they will never adjust. They will launch a counterattack. They will use your boundary as proof of your instability.
Oh, man.
Or, even more insidiously, they will instantly bring in a new triangle to validate their denial. They'll say, wow, I'm just trying to be honest with you. My therapist warned me you had a massive problem with feedback, and here you are proving them right.
Oh, that is chilling. It's like a hydra. You cut off one triangle and two more appear.
Exactly.
And here is where it gets really dark from a psychological standpoint. The most dangerous third party in these manipulative triangles isn't even a real physical person.
Right.
It's what the literature refers to as the implied audience.
The vague, faceless everyone.
Yes. Like, everyone thinks you're too intense, or most people wouldn't put up with what I put up with from you, or people are starting to notice how controlling you are.
It's so insidious.
You cannot cross-examine an implied audience. You can't call everyone on the phone and ask them what they actually meant. It's pure psychological warfare because it leverages our deepest, most primal evolutionary biology.
Because of the tribal aspect. Okay?
Exactly. For early humans, being excluded from the tribe meant literal death.
Yep.
You couldn't survive alone in the wilderness. So when the covert narcissist invokes the implied audience, your autonomic nervous system registers that the tribe is turning against you. It is a survival-level threat.
Which completely destabilizes your reality. The original argument about them being distant, that's entirely gone.
Evaporated.
You have abandoned your own needs, and you are now frantically auditioning for your sanity. You are over-explaining, defending your character, trying to prove that you are a reasonable person.
Yeah.
And there is another variation of this that shows up constantly in our forensic data, which is jealousy triangulation.
Oh, this one is rough. This is the constant, vague presence of an ex-partner. Or maybe a coworker who is just a friend, but who really understands them in a way you don't.
Exactly. And the narcissist doesn't even have to overtly cheat. In fact, covert narcissists often prefer the threat of infidelity to actual infidelity because the threat is a cleaner mechanism of control.
Wait, really? The threat is better than the act for them?
Oh, absolutely. They will just drop little hints. Like, oh, Sarah texted me today. She's having a hard time. She always says I'm the only one who gets her.
Oh, wow.
What is the invisible transaction happening there?
The psychological toll of that is absolutely staggering. Because the invisible transaction is that you, the listener, immediately stop demanding that your basic relationship needs be met. You stop asking them to step up.
Right.
Instead, you unconsciously enter a competition to not be replaced. You start performing. You try to be the cool partner, the understanding partner, the partner who doesn't complain.
And you're trying to win a game you didn't know you were playing.
Exactly. You suppress your own boundaries because you feel this invisible rival breathing down your neck. The anxiety differential is the entire point of the exercise. They are sitting there perfectly calm, feeling desired and powerful, and you are scrambling, your cortisol is spiking, and you are working overtime to prove your worth to them.
So if triangulation, whether it's the mother, the implied audience, or the ex, if that is the weapon, we have to ask, what does the battlefield look like? Where is this war actually taking place?
Right.
This brings us to the hidden motivation and the ultimate power objective. We have to talk about the architecture of toxic conflict.
We're talking about the Karpman drama triangle. This is a brilliant social model developed in the late 60s by a psychiatrist named Stephen Karpman. and it is foundational to understanding toxic dynamics.
Foundational.
Cartman identified that in dysfunctional, high-conflict systems, people subconsciously rotate through 3 distinct shifting roles: the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim.
Now, if we look at classic, overt narcissism, the grandiose, chest-thumping, I'm the greatest person in the room kind of narcissism, they often play the persecutor overtly.
Right, the CEO screaming at interns.
Exactly. They want you to know they are in charge. They use dominance, anger, and blatant superiority. But the covert narcissist operates with an entirely different playbook. Their preferred disguise, the costume they wear most comfortably, is something else entirely.
It's the victim. They completely weaponize vulnerability. They present themselves to the world as perpetually misunderstood, uniquely wounded, or unfairly burdened by life.
Yes.
Their boss is always out to get them, their ex was crazy, their parents didn't understand their genius, their health is always mysteriously failing in a way doctors can't seem to figure out.
And this right here is where the trap snaps shut on the empathetic listener. This answers our core question of why smart, capable people fall for this.
Because it triggers their empathy.
Because when you encounter this person, there is an unspoken, covert, codependent contract being offered to you. The underlying rule of their entire existence is basically, you cannot exist without me, and I cannot survive without you saving me.
Let's map exactly how this happens, because I know people listening are going to recognize this instantly. You, the listener, who is likely highly empathetic, very driven, probably a natural problem solver in your own life, you meet this person.
Right.
You enter the drama triangle right at the top as the rescuer. You see this complex, poetic, misunderstood person, and your empathy just kicks into overdrive. You think, they just had a hard run of luck. I can help them.
I can be the one to fix it.
Yes. I can provide the stability and the unconditional love they've never had. And let's be deeply honest about human nature here. You get a massive psychological hit of self-esteem by being the one who can solve their endless crises.
It feels amazing. It feels like profound purpose. It feels like ultimate intimacy.
Yeah.
You feel indispensable.
You really do. But it is a complete illusion, because the human body and mind are not built to carry the emotional weight of another adult indefinitely. You, the rescuer, will inevitably burn out.
It's mathematically guaranteed.
You will hit a wall. You will finally express frustration. You might say, I am exhausted. I am paying all the bills. I am managing your emotional crises. I need you to step up and carry some of this weight. And in that exact fraction of a second, the triangle violently spins.
The floor just drops entirely out from under you.
It's like being on a psychological tilt-a-whirl. You were the rescuer. But now you are exhausted and asking for help, so you unconsciously step into the victim role.
Right. You're asking to be rescued now.
You expect your partner to now rescue you.
Nah.
But the covert narcissist cannot tolerate you being the victim, because that means the spotlight is off their pain. So instantly they abandon their victim role and they shift straight into the persecutor.
It's whiplash.
They look at you, the person who's been carrying them, funding them, saving them for years, and they blame you for being inadequate. They say, you're always complaining. You are so controlling. You never actually cared about me. You just wanted to feel superior. You are suddenly cast as the villain in a play you didn't even audition for.
This is a major escalation point for anyone trying to understand what they have lived through, because the confusion in that moment is just blinding. You think, how can they not see everything I've done for them?
It makes no logical sense.
None.
Yeah.
But you have to understand the counterintuitive truth of the Cartman drama triangle. When you get into these arguments, the goal of the covert narcissist is never resolution.
Never. Because resolution means the play ends. And if the play ends, what happens?
If the play ends, they have to actually face themselves. As long as the play is running, they control the story. The chaos is not a byproduct of the relationship. The chaos is the objective.
Wow. The chaos is the objective.
By keeping you constantly rotating between rescuing them and then being persecuted by them, they keep you entirely focused on their emotional state. They never have to look in the mirror. They never have to take accountability for their own failures, their own stagnation, or their own internal emptiness.
Okay, I understand the mechanics of the drama triangle. I see the tilt-a-whirl spinning. But I am struggling to understand why they do it. What is actually happening in their brain that makes them need this level of endless, exhausting chaos?
Right.
Because to a healthy person, this sounds like a miserable way to live. So what is the engine driving this machine?
To answer that, we have to move past behavioral profiling and go straight into your territory, honestly. Clinical psychology. We have
Yeah.
to look at the structural architecture of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk about the literature from psychoanalysts like Melanie Klein and Otto Kernberg.
Right. We need to talk about the psychoanalytic concept of splitting. Splitting is a primitive psychological defense mechanism. To put it very simply, the narcissist's brain does not possess the capacity to hold ambivalence.
Right. No gray area.
Exactly. They are structurally incapable of seeing you, or themselves, as a complex, integrated human being who have both wonderful qualities and frustrating flaws.
It is entirely binary. You are either a saint or a demon.
Exactly. I like to think of it like an old, outdated electrical fuse box in a house.
Mm-hmm.
A healthy brain has dimmer switches. If my partner annoys me, my view of them might dim slightly, but the lights stay on. I still love them. I still respect them. I'm just annoyed.
Sure.
The narcissist's brain doesn't have dimmer switches. It only has cheap fuses. When they are idealizing you, when you are rescuing them, funding them, validating them, you are all good. You are perfect.
Yeah.
But the moment you assert a boundary, or the moment you push back on their victim narrative, or simply express a need of your own that inconveniences them, you overload their system.
The fuse blows.
The fuse blows. The lights go out completely. You instantly drop from being 100% perfect to being 0% good. You become all bad. There is absolutely no middle ground.
And this raises a game-changing perspective shift when we connect it back to our earlier discussion.
Right.
You were saying that triangulation, bringing in the mother, the ex, the implied audience, isn't just a clever debate tactic they learned somewhere.
No, triangulation is the behavioral output of the psychological defense mechanism of splitting. Think about the mechanics. When you push back and you suddenly become all bad in their mind, their psyche becomes deeply unstable.
Because you were just their hero a minute ago.
Right. A minute ago you were their savior, and now you are their abuser. They cannot process that internal contradiction. So they have to bring in a third party, a flying monkey, a family member, an implied audience who agrees with them. Why? They do it to externally validate their internal split.
Oh.
They need the outside world to confirm that you really are the monster their blown fuse is telling them you are.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to challenge you on this because this is where a lot of victims get deeply stuck. You are saying that this is a structural psychological failure, a blown fuse. But if they are structurally incapable of seeing people as whole human beings, how are they able to be perfectly charming, patient, and nuanced with their boss at work, but an absolute monster to their spouse at home? That doesn't sound like a blown fuse. That sounds like a calculated Machiavellian choice.
That is the ultimate question.
Yeah.
And it is the exact reason why covert narcissism drives victims to the absolute brink of insanity. But here is the clinical reality. The splitting mechanism is triggered by intimacy and vulnerability, not by casual social interaction.
Ah, okay.
At work, with their boss or their acquaintances, there are no real emotional stakes. They're wearing a mask, a persona, it's performance. And covert narcissists are brilliant performers. The distance protects them.
Right, there's a buffer there.
But at home, in a romantic relationship or a close family dynamic, the intimacy threatens to expose their deep internal emptiness. You, as the partner, are close enough to see the man behind the curtain. That proximity triggers absolute terror in their psyche.
So the mask drops.
The mask drops, the fuse blows, and the survival mechanisms take over. They aren't consciously plotting in a dark room to destroy you. They are wildly deploying defense mechanisms to prevent psychological collapse.
So it's not that they choose to be healthy at work and toxic at home. It's that the intimacy of home is the very thing that breaks their fragile operating system.
Exactly. And for the listener, this realization is meant to be the ultimate moment of liberation. I want you to hear this clearly. It was never personal. It was structural.
Never personal.
The entire agonizing process you went through, being put on a pedestal, being devalued over minor infractions, being triangulated, and ultimately being discarded, had absolutely nothing to do with your inadequacy as a partner, a friend, or an employee.
Right.
You could have been a literal saint,
Yeah.
and the fuse still would have blown. It had everything to do with their fractured psyche, desperately trying to stabilize a reality it cannot hold on its own.
It was never personal. It was structural. That is profound, and honestly, I think that removes a massive amount of shame for people.
I hope so.
But we cannot stop there. That brings us to an even darker question. Where does this come from? How does a human being develop this broken operating system in the first place? And more importantly for the listener, why is your operating system so perfectly primed to plug into theirs?
To answer that, we have to look beyond the individual and turn to family systems theory, specifically the groundbreaking work of Murray Bowen.
Okay, break that down for us.
Bowen theorized that a two-person emotional system, a dyad, like a husband and wife, is inherently unstable when it is put under stress. When a couple has unbearable anxiety or conflict between them that they cannot resolve, they will unconsciously pull in a third party to absorb the anxiety and stabilize the system.
Which is the exact origin of triangulation.
Yes. Covert narcissists were very often raised in these highly triangulated dysfunctional systems. Maybe they were the golden child who was triangulated against a sibling to make a narcissistic parent feel powerful.
Right.
But here's where we have to pivot and look at the listener. Because understanding the narcissist is only half the battle. We have to understand why highly accomplished, highly empathetic people get hooked by this.
In behavioral profiling, we call this victimology. And we don't use that term to victim blame. We use it to understand the lock and key mechanism of abuse. Why were you the perfect target?
I want you to look back at your own childhood for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
When you were growing up, were you the confidant for a stressed, overwhelmed parent?
Yeah.
Were you the go-between delivering messages when your parents were giving each other the silent treatment? Were you the secret keeper who had to maintain the illusion of a perfect family to the outside world, hiding an alcoholic parent or, financial ruin?
A lot of people are nodding right now.
If you were, you experienced a form of childhood trauma called parentification. You were a child forced to carry the emotional responsibilities of an adult.
And this creates a very specific, deeply ingrained behavioral clue that we look for. If you were raised to manage the emotional climate of the volatile adults around you, your nervous system learned a very dangerous lesson.
It learned that safety equals keeping everyone else calm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It learned that your physical and emotional safety depends on appeasing others. In trauma research, this is known as the fawn response. We all know fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning is the fourth trauma response.
And it's so common in these dynamics.
It is the instinct to immediately surrender your boundaries, anticipate the threat's needs, and make yourself as accommodating as possible to avoid conflict.
Yes, and think about how devastatingly perfect that is for the covert narcissist. You learn from a very young age to manage your anxiety by over-explaining yourself, by working harder to prove your loyalty, by rescuing people who are upset. So jump forward 20 years. You're in a relationship, and the covert narcissist uses jealousy triangulation. They casually mention how much their ex still loves them, or they bring in the implied audience and say everyone thinks you're being selfish. That doesn't just annoy you. It plugs directly into your deepest childhood conditioning.
It activates the fawn response instantly. You don't get angry and fight back. You don't realize it's toxic and run away. You just try to work harder. You try to be a better partner to prove the implied audience wrong.
Here's a shocking insight from clinical practice that I want every listener to write down. If someone's manipulation, like a passing comment about an ex or a subtle triangulation, hits you with a shame response that feels completely out of proportion to the specific incident.
Like a massive overreaction internally.
Yes. If it feels like the ground is opening up to swallow you and your entire world is ending, that is a massive, flashing clinical clue. The wound being activated in that moment is not just coming from your partner. It is an echo of your childhood. The covert narcissist didn't build that button. They just found the button that was installed in you decades ago, and they're pressing it to get what they want.
That is a staggering realization. The manipulation only works because it mimics the survival mechanics of your past. They hijacked your childhood survival strategy.
Exactly.
So if we now see the entire matrix, if we understand the triangulation, the drama triangle, the structural splitting of their brain, and the childhood origins of why you fawningly accepted it, we have to ask the most urgent question of all. How do you survive this? What is the defense protocol, and what are its hidden costs?
If you research this online, you will instantly find the most famous defense strategy recommended everywhere. It is called the gray rock method.
Yes, gray rock. The concept is straightforward. You become deliberately dull, unemotional, and completely unrewarding to interact with. You literally act like a gray rock.
Right.
The goal is to starve the predator of their narcissistic supply, the emotional reactions they feed on. The tactical execution is simple on paper. You give short, factual responses. Yes, no, I will drop the kids off at 5 p.m.
No extra details.
None. You make absolutely zero personal disclosures. You don't tell them how your day was. You don't show them you're sad. And you absolutely employ the rule of no JD. You do not justify, argue, defend, or explain yourself, ever.
That is the standard advice. But I am bringing this up because I need to issue a massive clinical warning. I want to introduce a hidden layer to gray rocking that almost all the blogs articles, and self-help gurus completely miss, and honestly, it is destroying victims.
Okay.
It involves the neuroscience of Dr. Stephen Porges, specifically his polyvagal theory.
Okay, take us into the neuroscience. What is polyvagal theory?
Polyvagal theory explains how our autonomic nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve, constantly scans our environment for safety or danger, a process called neuroception.
Right, it's automatic.
Exactly. When you are sitting across from a covert narcissist who is calmly, methodically assassinating your character using an implied audience, your body does not view that as a communication issue. Your cognitive brain knows you are sitting in a kitchen, but your autonomic nervous system reads that psychological attack as a literal, physical, mortal threat.
Wow. Like a tiger in the room.
Exactly. The vagus nerve sends an electrical signal to your organs. Your heart rate spikes, your digestion stops, your cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your nervous system is pushed instantly into fight, flight, or freeze.
And this is exactly what the covert narcissist wants. They know how to push your autonomic nervous system offline. They want you stammering, crying, or yelling because your dysregulation proves that they are the calm, rational one. That contrast is their narcissistic supply.
Exactly. But here's the danger of the gray rock method. You cannot effectively gray rock if your nervous system is in a mortal threat state. Your body is screaming at you to fight or run. And the gray rock method tells you to sit there, bite your tongue, flatten your facial expressions, and suppress every natural human reaction you have to being abused. If you force yourself to do this, there is a profound hidden trauma to gray rocking.
Let me guess the mechanism here. The attempt at emotional containment morphs into complete emotional suppression.
Yes. Gray rock was designed by professionals to be a temporary shield. It is a tactic to get you through a 10-minute interaction so you can safely get out of the room. It was never meant to be a permanent lifestyle.
But people use it for years.
They do. And if you do this for years, let's say you are forced to co-parent with a covert narcissist, or they are a boss you cannot afford to quit, you suffer massive identity erosion. By constantly burying your reactions, you internalize the toxic childhood belief that your true self, your authentic emotional reality, is dangerous and must be hidden at all costs.
And the flatness spreads, doesn't it? It doesn't stay confined to the narcissist.
It spreads to everything. You start gray rocking your friends. You gray rock your healthy family members. You gray rock your own children. Eventually, you gray rock yourself. You lose access to your own joy, your own anger, your own vitality.
That is heartbreaking.
You don't just starve the narcissist of supply, you starve your own soul. The trauma literally gets trapped in the biology of the body. We see victims develop chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, autoimmune flare-ups, and deep somatic issues because they have been swallowing mortal terror for years.
This is tragic, but let me push back on you practically from a survival standpoint.
Sure.
If someone is listening to this right now and they are in a situation where they absolutely cannot leave, maybe it's a high-conflict custody battle or it's an employer holding their visa hostage, what is the alternative? If fighting back feeds the narcissist and gray rocking destroys the victim's soul, what exactly do they do?
They have to upgrade their defense to practice something called detached empathy, and they have to utilize reverse Darvo.
Okay, let's break those down.
Detached empathy means you observe their behavior clinically, almost like a scientist studying a bug in a jar. You don't suppress your emotion, you shift your perspective. When they start triangulating you, you literally say to yourself in your head, wow, look at them. Look at this broken operating system desperately trying to stabilize its split psyche by inventing an implied audience.
You depersonalize it completely.
Exactly. You see the rusty machinery working, but you recognize that it has nothing to do with you. You observe the poison, but you do not drink it.
That cognitive distance is powerful. And what about reverse Darvo? DARVO is a classic forensic acronym. It stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim, and Offender. It's the standard abuser playbook.
Right.
You confront them, they deny it, they attack you for bringing it up, and suddenly they have reversed the role so they are the victim and you are the offender.
Right. To perform reverse Darvo, you actively, verbally refuse to accept the role of offenders that they're trying to assign you without getting emotionally dysregulated.
Let's role play this so the listener can hear the actual mechanics of it. I will play the covert narcissist. You bring up a valid complaint, and I will try to Darvo you. Let's say you are upset that I didn't pick up the kids like I promised. Go.
Hey, you said you were going to pick up the kids at 3, and you completely forgot. I had to leave work in the middle of a meeting, and I'm really upset about it.
I didn't forget. I was overwhelmed with a project you knew I had due. But honestly, it's always about you, isn't it? You never appreciate how much stress I'm under to provide for this family. My mother was right. You are incredibly selfish and unforgiving.
Okay, pause. I feel the spike of cortisol. My instinct is to defend myself. I want to yell, I'm not selfish, I do everything for this family.
Which is exactly what I want.
Right. But if I do that, I've taken the bait. So I'm going to reverse Darvo. I'm going to refuse the role of the selfish offender and return to the facts. Let's resume. We are not talking about my character, and we are not talking about your mother. We are talking about the fact that the kids were left at school. I understand you are stressed, but you need to communicate next time so they aren't left waiting. That's the only issue on the table right now.
Wow. You are so cold and rigid. You literally have no empathy for me at all.
You are welcome to feel that way, but the schedule for the kids still needs to be managed. Are you picking them up tomorrow, or am I?
And scene. That is brilliant. You didn't suppress your reality, you didn't agree with me, but you also didn't feed me the emotional chaos I was digging for. You became a mirror reflecting only the logistical facts.
Exactly. But here is the most critical piece of the puzzle, and this is the antidote to the trauma of gray rocking. You must process the suppressed emotions you experienced during that interaction outside the toxic dynamic.
Ah, yeah.
When you walk away from that conversation, your heart will still be pounding. You have to take that anger, that profound sense of injustice, that fear, and you must process it within a safe container. You take it to a trauma-informed therapist.
Right.
You take it to a trusted friend who sees reality clearly. Or you process it through intense somatic practices, running, journaling, screaming in your car.
Yeah.
You contain your emotional reaction in front of the narcissist to protect yourself, but you absolutely must release it somewhere else. You cannot let the poison rot internally.
Containment versus suppression. That distinction alone could save someone's life. Now, I want to pull the lens all the way back, because covert narcissism doesn't just happen in living rooms and kitchens. It is a systemic issue. It is a societal operating system. I want to look at the cultural and workplace implications of this pathology.
Oh, this is where it gets institutional. The narcissistic boss.
We see this in workplace forensics constantly. We call it institutional triangulation. The covertly narcissistic boss operates using a strategy of charm management. To the CEO, the board, and the clients, they are beloved.
The golden child of the company.
Exactly. They are charismatic, agreeable, and seem like visionaries. But behind closed doors, they are running a psychological Hunger Games with their own team.
The invisible transaction in the workplace is incredibly destructive. The classic setup involves the boss taking two highly competent, ambitious employees. The boss will implicitly designate one of them as the golden child and the other as the scapegoat.
And they actively foster intense, unspoken rivalry between them. Why? Because if the team is divided and competing against each other, everyone has to rely solely on the boss for validation, resources, and truth.
Right, they become the sole funnel of information.
Information becomes strictly siloed. The boss tells employee A one thing and employee B something else. Trust between peers is completely destroyed. The boss positions themselves as the sole arbiter of reality and success.
Which leads to a deeply disturbing case example found in the research of organizational psychologist Robert Sutton. He looked at systemic failures in corporate environments, specifically focusing on how driven, accomplished women are treated in these systems.
What did the data show?
It showed something horrifying. Our society, particularly in corporate capitalism, actually rewards the diagnostic criteria of narcissistic personality disorder, and we rebrand it as leadership.
Wow.
Grandiosity, a fundamental lack of empathy, a willingness to manipulate others, and extreme self-interest. We look at those traits and we call that person a visionary.
Yeah.
We call them a decisive executive. We literally promote the pathology.
It is incentivized pathology. We build systems that are tailor-made for predators to thrive in.
Completely. And here is the tragedy for accomplished women. When a driven, highly successful woman is targeted, manipulated, and psychologically abused by a covert narcissist in the workplace, or even in a relationship society, turns to her with a deeply insulting question.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They look at her and ask, "You're so smart. You have a PhD. You're a CEO. You're a brilliant doctor. How on earth did you fall for this?"
It's a second betrayal by society. It operates on the flawed assumption that competence and intelligence in the boardroom somehow equal in vulnerability to covert psychological abuse.
Exactly. And the clinical truth completely destroys that victim-blaming misconception. Driven women are not targeted despite their success. They are targeted because of it.
Let that sink in.
Think about the traits that make a woman successful in her career. High empathy, fierce loyalty, relentless work ethic, a deep capacity to problem solve, and the grit to push through difficult situations. To a covert narcissist, those traits make her the ultimate premium narcissistic supply.
Wow.
The narcissist looks at a highly capable woman, and they don't see a partner or a colleague. They see an endless reservoir of energy, competence, and resources that they can slowly drain for their own benefit.
That completely flips the narrative. Your strengths were weaponized against you. Your capacity to endure hardship was used to keep you in a toxic system longer than anyone else would have stayed. And this structural manipulation doesn't just happen in boardrooms. We can draw a macro-level parallel to observe how this operates on a global scale. Let's look at political triangulation. Now, I want to be very clear. We are not taking any political sides whatsoever here. We are strictly analyzing the mechanical strategy. Let's look at the third-way political strategy popularized in the 90s by consultants like Dick Morris.
Right, the political strategy of triangulation.
Yes. The structural concept was brilliant in its manipulation. The strategy was for a political leader to adopt the most popular policy positions of their direct political opposition. By doing so, they insulated themselves from attack, effectively neutralizing the opponent by stealing their platform. They establish a third force in the center.
While that might be it takes the most appealing aspects of both sides to consolidate all the power in the center. Who does that leave out? It leaves marginalized voices or strict principled opponents on either side, completely isolated. It paints them as extremists, unable to gain any traction because the center has monopolized the definition of reasonable.
Which is exactly what happens in the family unit.
Yes. The structure of the manipulation is exactly the same, whether we're talking about two politicians fighting for a country, two mid-level managers fighting for a promotion, or two spouses arguing in a kitchen. It is always about maintaining ultimate power by controlling the points of connection and isolating the target.
It is fractal. It looks the same at every level of magnification.
Okay, I want us to take a deep breath, and let's synthesize this incredible journey we have just been on. We didn't just give you a list of red flags today. We started in your kitchen, recognizing the subtle, coercive control of a partner using a phantom jury, saying, everyone thinks you're too sensitive. We unpacked the invisible weapon of triangulation.
We mapped the Cartman drama triangle, watching the covert narcissist weaponize the victim role. We saw how they invite you to be the rescuer, extract your empathy, and the moment you ask for help, the floor drops and they become your persecutor.
We dove into the fractured architecture of their mind. We looked at the primitive defense mechanism of splitting the blown fuse that demands a third party to externally validate their inability to see you as a whole, complex person.
We traced the origins back to family systems. We exposed how childhood parentification and the trauma-induced fawn response groomed your nervous system to be the absolute perfect lock for their key.
We navigated the extreme neurological dangers of the gray rock method. We utilized polyvagal theory to recognize the critical difference between safe, temporary emotional containment and soul-crushing long-term emotional suppression.
And we exposed how this exact same invisible operating system is not just confined to toxic marriages. It is rewarded in our corporate workplaces and utilized to control narratives on the global stage.
If you are listening to this right now and your heart is beating a little faster, if you are recognizing these patterns in your own life, your past relationships, your childhood, or your workplace, I want to speak directly to your empowerment right now. The confusion you felt, the absolute exhaustion, the endless, maddening self-doubt where you wondered if you were the crazy one. I need you to hear this. They were not signs of weakness. They were not signs of a low intellect.
They were the exact, predictable biological symptoms of a healthy, empathetic human nervous system reacting to covert psychological warfare.
They were signs that your trust was violated in a context where trust was supposed to be warranted. You were fighting against a structural psychological failure, not a personal inadequacy on your part. You can finally stop blaming yourself for not knowing how to dismantle a bomb you didn't even know was planted under your feet.
I want to leave you with a final mystery to unravel in your own life. I want you to think about this today, tomorrow, and the next time you feel that familiar, panicky spike of anxiety in a conversation. The next time you find yourself desperately over-explaining your reality, trying to prove that you are a good person, stop. Take a breath and ask yourself a simple question. Are you trying to communicate with a partner who wants to understand you? Or are you auditioning for your own sanity in front of an invisible jury they constructed to control you?
The moment you realize the jury isn't real, you can step off the stage. And the moment you stop performing, the triangle collapses entirely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep observing, and above all else, always trust your own reality.